The moment she fixed the watch, it started bleeding. The sound was not ticking. It was a pulse. Slow. Heavy. Alive. Emily Carter froze in the dim glow of her kitchen light. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and instinct. The delivery bag still hung from her shoulder, forgotten, as she stared at the antique watch resting in her palm. It had been cold when she found it, lifeless metal with a cracked face and unmoving hands. Just another broken thing left behind by a stranger who had disappeared before she could even ask his name. But now, as she adjusted the tiny gear with her tool, the second hand twitched. Then it lurched forward, and something dark seeped beneath the glass, spreading like ink through water. Her fingers trembled. She had fixed hundreds of broken items before, cheap watches, old radios, worn-out appliances. This was different. This felt like something was watching her from the inside. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Emily swallowed hard and leaned closer, her heartbeat beginning to sync with the rhythm coming from the watch. It was impossible. Watches did not beat like hearts. The sound grew louder, filling the quiet apartment, pressing against her ears until it felt like it was coming from inside her own chest. She pulled her hand back, but the watch did not stop. The crack on its surface sealed itself slowly, as if time was reversing, as if something ancient refused to remain broken. A faint symbol began to form beneath the glass, intricate and unfamiliar, glowing faintly with a deep crimson light. Emily stepped back, shaking her head, trying to convince herself this was some kind of trick, some illusion caused by exhaustion after a long day of deliveries. But then the air shifted. The temperature dropped just enough to make her skin prickle, and for a brief moment, she felt it. Not fear. Not yet. Something heavier. Something older. Like standing in the presence of something that had been waiting far longer than she had been alive. The watch pulsed again, stronger this time, and somewhere, far beyond her small apartment, something ancient opened its eyes. Emily did not sleep that night. The watch never stopped. She placed it on the small wooden table beside her bed, stepping back as if distance alone could quiet whatever lived inside it, but the sound followed her. Thump, thump, slow, steady, impossible. It filled the apartment, echoing through the thin walls, sinking into the floor, rising into the air like something breathing in the dark. She turned off the lights, then turned them back on again. Nothing changed. The watch lay exactly where she had left it, its surface smooth now, no crack, no sign it had ever been broken. But the symbol beneath the glass remained, faint and pulsing, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. Emily pressed her hands against her temples. This was not real. It could not be. She had worked a double shift, skipped dinner, pushed herself too far. That was all. Exhaustion. Hallucination. She grabbed her phone, ready to search for anything that could explain what she was seeing, but the screen flickered once and went black. The air grew colder. Not the kind of cold that came from a broken heater, but something deeper, heavier, like winter pressing through the walls without permission. Her breath became visible for a moment, a faint cloud in front of her lips. That was when she heard it. Not from the watch. From outside. A car door closing. Soft. Precise. Followed by another. And another. Emily moved slowly toward the window, her pulse now racing in sharp contrast to the slow rhythm behind her. She parted the curtain just enough to see the street below. Black vehicles lined the curb, too many for this quiet block, their engines silent, their presence unnatural. The streetlight flickered once, then steadied, casting long shadows across the pavement. Doors opened in perfect unison. Figures stepped out. Tall. Still. Dressed in dark coats that seemed to absorb the light around them. They did not speak. They did not look around like people searching for an address. They already knew where they were. Emily's throat tightened. This had nothing to do with exhaustion. She stepped back from the window, her mind racing, trying to find something, anything, that made sense. The watch pulsed again, louder now, as if responding to the presence below. Thump, thump, thump. It was faster, not matching her heartbeat anymore. Leading it, calling something. She looked at it, then at the door. A thought formed, cold and clear. They were not here by accident. They were here for it. For the watch. For whatever she had awakened. A sharp knock broke the silence. Not loud. Not aggressive. Controlled. Certain. Emily froze. The knock came again, the same measured rhythm. Whoever stood on the other side was not asking. They were waiting. The watch pulsed once more, a deep, resonant beat that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Emily swallowed, forcing herself to move. One step, then another. Her hand hovered near the doorknob, trembling despite her effort to stay calm. Every instinct told her not to open it. But something stronger, something quieter, pulled her forward. The moment her fingers brushed the handle, the watch behind her surged. The sound exploded through the room, not just a heartbeat now, but something closer to a drum echoing in a vast, empty hall. And then, from the other side of the door, a voice. Low, calm, unmistakably in control. Emily Carter. It said, as if the name had been spoken long before she was ever born. You have something that belongs to our king. Her hand went still. The world seemed to narrow to that single moment, that single truth pressing in on her from all sides. This was real. All of it. The watch. The symbol. The cold. The figures waiting outside. And whatever king they served. The voice spoke again, softer now, but no less dangerous. Open the door. Emily did not open the door. Not immediately. Her hand remained on the handle, her breath shallow, her mind racing through every possible outcome, each one worse than the last. The voice on the other side had not raised in volume, had not threatened, had not demanded again. It simply waited. That was what made it worse. The certainty in it. The patience. The watch behind her pulsed again, stronger, louder, as if it were answering the voice, as if the two were connected across the thin barrier of wood and steel. Emily turned her head slowly, her eyes locking onto the table where the watch lay. The symbol beneath the glass was no longer faint. It burned now, a deep crimson glow that cast shadows across the surface, forming patterns that shifted when she tried to focus on them. She took a step back from the door, then another. If they wanted it, they could take it. That was the logical thought. Leave it. Walk away. Let this nightmare belong to someone else. But her feet did not move toward the table. They stayed rooted where she stood, caught between fear and something she did not understand. Another sound broke the silence. Not from outside. From within the watch itself. A whisper. Not a voice she could clearly hear, but a sensation, like words brushing against the inside of her mind. Old. Tired. Waiting. Emily's chest tightened. She shook her head, trying to push it away, but the feeling remained, steady as the pulse. The knock did not come again. Instead, the door handle moved. Slowly. Precisely. It stopped just short of turning, as if whoever stood outside was testing the boundary, measuring her response. Emily's breath caught. They could come in if they wanted to. That much was clear. The lock was not meant to keep something like this out. Then the voice returned, closer now, as if the speaker stood inches from the door. You do not understand what you hold, it said, calm and even. But our king does, and he does not wait forever. The words settled into the room like a weight. Emily swallowed, forcing herself to speak, her voice unsteady but present. Then tell him to come get it himself. Silence followed. Not empty, not passive. It felt like something had shifted, like a line had been crossed that could not be uncrossed. The watch reacted instantly. The pulse surged, a powerful beat that made the table vibrate. Then another, and another, faster now, louder, until the sound filled every corner of the apartment. Emily turned fully toward it, drawn despite herself. The air around the watch distorted slightly, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, except this was cold, sharp, wrong. And then, without warning, the sound stopped. Complete silence. Emily's ears rang in the absence of it. For a single second, the world held its breath. Then the door opened. Not forced, not broken. It simply moved inward, smooth and silent, revealing the figure that had been waiting on the other side. He was tall, dressed in black that seemed to swallow the light, his features sharp and composed in a way that felt unnatural. His eyes found hers immediately, pale and reflective, like polished steel catching a distant flame. He did not step inside right away. He stood there, as if granting her the illusion of space. You were given a chance to hand it over, he said quietly. Few are offered that courtesy. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, loud now without the watch to compete with it. She did not look away. I did not take anything, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. It was left behind. The man's gaze shifted past her, landing on the table. For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. It was never lost, he said. It was waiting. He stepped inside then, and the temperature dropped again, the air tightening around him as if the room itself recognized what had just entered. Behind him, more figures stood in the hallway, still and silent, their presence a wall that closed off any escape. Emily's fingers curled slightly at her sides, her mind searching for any way out, any explanation that could undo what had already begun. But deep down, beneath the fear and the confusion, one truth settled into place with terrifying clarity. This had nothing to do with a broken watch, and everything to do with something far older that had just found her. The man did not rush. He did not reach for the watch. He simply stood there, his gaze fixed on it, as if he were looking at something far more significant than a piece of metal on a table. Emily felt it again, that pressure in the air, like the room had become too small to contain what was happening. The figures behind him remained perfectly still, their presence silent but absolute, cutting off any thought of escape before it could even form. The man stepped forward at last, slow and deliberate, his eyes never leaving the watch. "Do you hear it?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, carrying a weight that made it difficult to ignore. Emily hesitated, then nodded once. Yes. Her voice was quieter now, drawn down by something she could not name. The man stopped a few feet from the table. "Most humans do not," he said. "To them, it is nothing more than a broken object." His gaze shifted briefly to her, sharp and searching. "But you fixed it." Emily's throat tightened. "I did not fix anything," she said. "It started on its own." The man studied her for a moment longer, as if measuring the truth in her words, then turned back to the watch. "No," he said softly. "It started because of you." The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise. Emily took a step back, her mind rejecting the implication even as her instincts told her it was real. "I do not even know what it is," she said. The man's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, a subtle tightening, as if the question itself carried more weight than she understood. "That," he said, "is not a watch." He reached out then, stopping just short of touching it, his hand hovering above the surface as if there were an invisible barrier between them. "It is a relic, older than the city you stand in, older than the nation you belong to." His voice lowered further, almost reverent now. "And it does not respond to just anyone." Emily's gaze dropped to the table. The crimson glow beneath the glass pulsed faintly, slower now, steadier, as if it were listening. "Then why me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The man did not answer immediately. Instead, he finally touched the watch. The moment his fingers made contact, the glow flickered. The pulse stuttered once, twice, then weakened. His hand tightened slightly, and for the first time, something like tension crossed his face. "That," he said quietly, "is the question that concerns us." He lifted the watch carefully, holding it in his palm. The symbol dimmed further, the crimson light fading as if retreating from him. Emily felt it instantly. The absence. The room seemed to exhale, the pressure easing just enough for her to breathe more freely. But beneath that relief, something else stirred. A pull. Subtle at first, then stronger. Her chest tightened, her heartbeat quickening, no longer in sync with the watch but drawn toward it, as if something inside her refused to let it go. "Wait," she said without thinking, stepping forward. The man's eyes snapped to hers. The watch reacted. The moment she moved closer, the glow surged back to life, stronger than before, the crimson light flaring beneath the glass, the pulse returning with a force that made the man's hand tense. He went still. Slowly, deliberately, he extended the watch toward her. "Touch it," he said. It was not a request. Emily hesitated, every instinct warning her to stop, to step back, to let this end. But the pull inside her grew. Stronger, undeniable now. Her hand lifted on its own, fingers trembling as they moved closer. The moment her skin brushed the surface, the world shifted. The pulse exploded into motion, loud and overwhelming, no longer contained within the watch but echoing through her entire body. The symbol beneath the glass blazed, intricate lines unfolding into something far more complex, something ancient. Images flashed behind her eyes. Stone halls, endless night, a throne carved from darkness, and a figure sitting upon it, still and silent, as if waiting. Emily gasped, her hand jerking back, but the sensation lingered, the echo of something that did not belong to her. The man watched her closely, his expression unreadable now, but his voice carried a new weight when he spoke. "It is confirmed," he said quietly. "The relic recognizes you." The words settled into the room like a verdict. Emily shook her head, stepping back again. "That does not make sense." "It does not have to make sense to you," the man replied. "It only has to be true." He looked down at the watch once more, then back at her. "You are coming with us." It was not a threat. It was a certainty. And for the first time, Emily realized that whatever had started the moment she fixed that watch was no longer something she could walk away from. Emily did not move right away. The words settled into her chest, heavy and unyielding, as if they had always been waiting for her to hear them. "You are coming with us." Not a question, not a negotiation, a decision already made. She shook her head slowly, her breath uneven. "No," she said, the word quiet but firm. "I am not going anywhere." The figures in the hallway did not react. The man in front of her did not step closer. But something in the room changed. The air grew still, as if even the walls were listening. He studied her for a long moment, his pale eyes reflecting the faint crimson glow from the watch. "You misunderstand," he said calmly. "This is not a matter of preference." Emily's hands curled into fists at her sides. "Then make me understand," she replied, her voice gaining strength despite the fear pressing against her ribs. "Because from where I am standing, you walked into my home and started talking like I belonged to you." "Hey!" Flicker of something crossed his expression then. Not anger, not surprise, something closer to recognition. "You do not belong to us," he said. "But what you awakened does not belong to you either." He lifted the watch slightly, and the glow responded immediately, brightening, the pulse deepening into a steady, commanding rhythm. "This relic has not stirred in 300 years, he continued. "Not for our kind. Not for anyone." His gaze locked onto hers again. "Until you touched it." Emily felt that pull again, stronger now, tugging at something deep inside her chest. It was not just curiosity anymore. It was connection. Unwanted. Unexplainable. Real. "That still does not explain why I have to go with you," she said, though her voice had softened. The man exhaled slowly, as if choosing his next words with care. "Because the moment this relic awakened, every being tied to it felt it." He tilted his head slightly toward the hallway, toward the unseen street beyond. "We were simply the closest." Emily's stomach dropped. "You are saying there are others?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "And not all of them will knock on your door." The silence that followed was sharp, immediate. The implication hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Emily's mind raced, images flashing through her thoughts, of strangers far worse than the one standing in front of her, of something ancient and dangerous turning its attention toward her because of a single moment she could not undo. The watch pulsed again, slower now, but deeper, as if confirming every word. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Really?" The man looked down at it, and for the first time, there was something almost like reverence in his gaze. "It is a vessel," he said. "A binding relic forged in blood and oath." His voice lowered further. "It carries the sealed essence of our king." Emily's breath caught. "Essence," she repeated, the word unfamiliar in this context, yet heavy with meaning. "His power," the man clarified. "His will. His heart." The last word lingered. Not metaphorical. Not symbolic. Something literal. Something that had been taken, hidden, preserved. Emily's chest tightened again, the pull intensifying, her heartbeat stumbling as if trying to match something that was not there anymore. "And I fixed it," she whispered. The man nodded once. "You restored its function," he said. "Which means you have done what none of us could." Emily looked at her hands, at the faint tremor that had not left them since this began. "I did not know what it was," she said. "That does not matter," he replied. "The relic responded to you. That is what matters." He stepped closer now, not threatening, but undeniable in his presence. "If it remains with you, it will continue to call out. Others will come. Some will try to take it. Others will try to destroy it." His gaze hardened slightly. "And you will be caught in the middle of forces you cannot survive." Emily lifted her eyes to his, searching for any sign that this was not as serious as it sounded. There was none. Only certainty. Only truth. The watch pulsed once more, deep and steady. and for a brief moment, she felt something else beneath the fear. A strange, quiet awareness, as if whatever was inside that relic recognized her. The man extended his hand toward her, not forceful, but final. "Come with us," he said, "before something worse finds you first." And this time, Emily did not answer right away, because for the first time since this began, the choice in front of her did not feel like a choice at all. Emily moved, not forward at first, but sideways, just enough to put distance between herself and the door, between herself and the men who had filled her apartment with something that did not belong in her world. Her mind was still racing, but her body had made a decision before her thoughts could catch up. She reached for her jacket on the chair, her fingers brushing the worn fabric, grounding herself in something familiar, something real. The man did not stop her. He watched. That was what unsettled her the most. The certainty that he did not need to rush, did not need to force anything, because he already knew how this would end. Emily slipped the jacket on, her movements slow, deliberate, as if any sudden motion might break whatever fragile balance existed in the room. "If I go," she said carefully, "I go because I choose to, not because you tell me to." The man inclined his head slightly, accepting the statement without argument. "Of course," he said, but there was something in his tone that made it clear the outcome remained the same. Emily exhaled, steadying herself, then took a step toward the door. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world outside felt different. The night air was colder than it should have been for the season, sharp against her skin, carrying a stillness that pressed down on the quiet street. The black vehicles waited exactly where she had seen them, their surfaces reflecting the faint glow of streetlights and distorted lines. The other figures stood nearby, silent, watchful, their attention fixed on her with an intensity she could feel even without meeting their eyes. No one spoke. No one moved until she did. Emily glanced back once, at her apartment, at the small space that had been hers just hours ago, before everything changed. It looked the same. Ordinary, safe, and completely out of reach now. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice lower as she faced forward again. The man stepped beside her, close enough that she could feel the drop in temperature that followed him. "Somewhere secure," he replied. "Somewhere the relic can be contained." Emily's jaw tightened slightly. "Contained," she repeated. The word did not sit well. "Protected," he corrected, though the difference felt thin. One of the vehicle doors opened soundlessly as they approached. Emily hesitated for only a second before sliding inside. The interior was dark, the seats smooth and cold, the space larger than it should have been, as if the dimensions did not quite match the outside. The man entered after her, the door closing with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any slam. The vehicle began to move immediately, gliding forward with no visible driver, no sound of an engine, only a soft hum that vibrated beneath her feet. Emily looked down at her hands, at the faint tremor that had not left them, then at the watch still resting in the man's palm. It pulsed steadily now, no longer erratic, no longer violent, but alive in a way that felt deliberate. A slow, controlled rhythm, as if it knew exactly where it was going. "You said others would come," she said after a moment. "Who are they?" The man did not answer right away. He looked out the window, though the glass reflected nothing but darkness, then back at her. "Those who seek power," he said. "Those who fear it. And those who remember what was lost." Emily frowned slightly. "And your king," she said. "What does he want?" The man's gaze sharpened just enough to make her notice. "What he always wants," he replied. "What was taken from him?" The watch pulsed once, deeper this time, the sound resonating through the confined space, through Emily's chest, through something she still could not name. She shifted in her seat, unsettled, her instincts pulling in two directions at once. Fear, sharp and immediate, telling her she had just stepped into something far beyond her control. And something else, quieter, stranger, a sense that this was not entirely new, that somewhere, in a place she could not reach, she had felt this before. The vehicle turned, the motion smooth and effortless, and the city outside began to change. Familiar streets gave way to empty stretches of road, buildings thinning, lights fading, until the world beyond the window became little more than shadows and distance. Emily leaned back slightly, her eyes drifting once more to the watch. The crimson glow beneath the glass had softened, the symbol within it shifting slowly, as if it were no longer reacting, but waiting. It recognizes you, the man had said. The words echoed in her mind, settling deeper with every passing mile. Emily swallowed, her voice quieter now, almost lost beneath the hum of the moving car. Then what happens when your king sees me? The man did not look away this time. His answer came without hesitation, without softness. That, he said, depends on what he remembers. The vehicle slowed without warning. Not gradually. Instantly. One moment they were moving through darkness. The next they were still, as if the world itself had decided they had gone far enough. Emily felt it before she saw it. That same pressure from before, but heavier now, deeper, pressing against her chest like the air had thickened into something almost solid. The door beside her opened on its own. Cold air poured in, sharper than anything she had felt that night, carrying with it a silence so complete it felt unnatural. Emily stepped out slowly, her boots touching ground that did not sound like pavement. Stone. Smooth. Ancient. She looked up, and her breath caught. The structure in front of her did not belong to the modern world. It rose out of the darkness like something carved from night itself, towering walls of black stone stretching upward beyond what the dim lights could reveal. No windows. No visible entrances beyond the massive doors directly ahead. It was not a building meant to be seen. It was meant to exist. The man stepped out beside her, the watch still in his hand, its pulse steady, controlled, almost calm now. "We have arrived," he said. Emily did not respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the structure, her instincts screaming in quiet, insistent waves. This place was wrong. Not in the obvious sense of danger, but in something deeper, like stepping into a memory that did not belong to her. The doors began to open before they reached them. No guards. No sound. Just movement. Slow and deliberate, revealing darkness beyond. Not empty darkness. Depth. The kind that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Emily hesitated at the threshold. Her body resisted in a way her mind could not explain. Every part of her wanted to step back, to turn around, to run. But the pull returned. Stronger than before. Not coming from the man beside her. Not from the figures behind. From inside. From the same place the watch had reached earlier. "You feel it," the man said quietly, watching her. It was not a question. Emily swallowed. "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. He nodded once. "Then you understand why you are here." She did not. Not fully. But she stepped forward anyway. The moment she crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped again. The air inside was colder, but still heavy. The kind of silence that did not come from emptiness, but from something choosing not to make a sound. The doors closed behind them without a trace of noise. The space inside stretched far beyond what the exterior suggested. High ceilings lost in shadow. Long corridors branching into darkness. Dim lights set into the walls, casting a faint glow that did not quite reach the floor. And at the far end of the main hall, elevated above everything else, was a structure that could only be described as a throne, carved from the same black stone. Immense. Silent. Waiting. Emily's steps slowed without her realizing it. Her eyes fixed on that distant shape, her breath uneven, her pulse no longer entirely her own. The watch reacted immediately. The moment they entered, its rhythm deepened, the sound echoing through the hall in a way that should not have been possible. From something so small. The crimson glow brightened, casting faint reflections along the stone walls as if the entire place recognized it. The figures behind them shifted slightly, not forward, not aggressive, but alert. A reaction. Not to Emily. To the relic. The man beside her stopped walking. Emily did the same, though she did not remember deciding to. "From this point forward," he said, his voice lower now, more controlled than before, "you will remain silent unless addressed." Emily turned toward him, her brow tightening. "You said I needed answers." "You will have them," he replied. "But not from me." His gaze shifted past her, toward the throne. Emily felt it then. Not a sound. Not movement. Presence. It filled the space slowly, like something waking from a long, deep sleep. The air changed first. Colder. Heavier. Then the silence deepened, as if even the building itself held its breath. The watch pulsed once. Hard. A single beat that echoed through the hall like a signal. And then, from the darkness surrounding the throne, something moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough to break the stillness. A figure, seated, barely visible at first, then clearer as the faint light reached it. Tall, still, watching. Emily's breath caught. She could not see his face clearly yet, but she felt it. The weight of his attention. Direct. Unavoidable. Ancient. The man beside her lowered his head slightly. The figures behind them did the same. Emily remained standing as she was, frozen in place, her heart pounding against her ribs, her mind struggling to process what her instincts already understood. This was him, the one they called king. And for the first time since this began, the watch in the man's hand did something new. It did not just pulse. It reached. A deep, resonant beat that seemed to stretch across the distance between them and the throne, as if answering something that had just awakened in return. The silence did not break. It deepened. It pressed inward, heavy and absolute, as the figure on the throne remained still, yet undeniably present. Emily could not see his face clearly, but she felt it. The weight of his attention settled on her like something tangible, something that reached past her skin and into the space beneath it. The watch answered him. Another pulse. Slower. Stronger. It echoed through the hall, no longer just a sound, but a force that seemed to move the air itself. The man beside her lowered himself further, his head bowed in clear submission. "My king," he said quietly. The title carried through the chamber, absorbed by the stone, as if the walls themselves recognized it. The figure on the throne did not respond immediately. Instead, the faint light shifted, just enough to reveal more of him. Pale skin, still as marble, dark hair that fell without movement, and eyes. When they opened fully, the glow within them was not bright, not dramatic, but deep, ancient, like embers buried beneath centuries of ash. Emily's breath caught. The moment his gaze locked onto hers, something inside her chest tightened sharply, as if an invisible thread had been pulled taut between them. The watch reacted violently. The pulse surged, rapid now, uncontrolled, the crimson light flaring beneath the glass with an intensity that painted the stone walls in shifting red shadows. The man holding it tensed, his grip tightening as if the relic itself had gained weight. "It responds to him," he said under his breath, though his voice carried clearly in the silence. As expected, but his eyes flicked toward Emily, and there was something else there, something less certain. The king rose, not abruptly, not with force, but the moment he stood, the entire space seemed to shift around him, as if gravity itself had adjusted to accommodate his presence. Every figure in the hall lowered further, every movement stilled. Emily remained where she was, unable to move, unable to look away. He stepped forward once. The sound of his movement was almost non-existent, yet it carried, each step deliberate, measured, inevitable. The distance between them closed slowly, and with every step, the pressure in the air increased. The watch pulsed harder. Emily's heartbeat followed, no longer separate, no longer her own. When he stopped, he stood several feet in front of her, close enough that she could finally see him clearly. His face was not what she expected, not monstrous, not exaggerated. It was controlled, perfect in a way that felt wrong, like something carved rather than born. But it was his eyes that held her, not the color, not the light, the recognition. He was looking at her as if he had seen her before. "Lift it," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. The man beside her did not hesitate. He raised the watch slightly, presenting it forward. The crimson glow intensified, the symbol beneath the glass shifting rapidly now, unfolding into patterns that seemed almost alive. The king's gaze moved to it for a brief moment. And in that moment, something changed. Not in the room. In him. A flicker. Subtle, but real. Then his eyes returned to Emily. "Come closer," he said. Emily's body resisted. Every instinct screamed at her to stay where she was, to not move another inch towards something so clearly beyond her understanding. But the pull inside her surged again, stronger than before, overriding everything else. Her foot moved, then the other. Step by step, she closed the distance until she stood directly in front of him. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something unspoken, something ancient and unresolved. The watch pulsed once more, and this time, the king reacted. His hand lifted slowly, stopping just short of her face, as if he were measuring the distance between them. Not physically, something else. "Look at me," he said. Emily already was. She could not do anything else. His gaze sharpened, the ember-like glow within his eyes intensifying just slightly. "What did you do?" he asked. The question was simple, but beneath it was something deeper. Not accusation, not anger, something closer to need. Emily swallowed, her voice barely steady. "I fixed it," she said. The words hung between them. The king went still, completely still, and for the first time, the room did not feel like it belonged to him. It felt like it was waiting for something else to happen, something neither of them fully controlled. His hand moved closer, not touching, hovering just above her skin. The watch surged again, a powerful, resonant beat that echoed through the hall. And then, without warning, the symbol beneath the glass shifted completely, locking into a pattern that had not appeared before. The king's expression changed. Not dramatically, not outwardly, but enough. Enough for the man beside her to inhale sharply, enough for the figures behind them to shift in unease. Because whatever had just happened was not expected. The reaction did not go unnoticed. The moment the symbol locked into its new pattern, a ripple moved through the hall, subtle but unmistakable. The figures behind Emily shifted, their stillness breaking just enough to reveal tension beneath their control. The man who had brought her here lowered his head further, but his eyes remained fixed on the watch, sharp, calculating, uncertain. "That configuration," he said quietly, his voice tight for the first time. "It should not exist." The king did not look at him. His gaze remained on Emily, unblinking, unwavering, as if the rest of the room had ceased to matter. His hand, still hovering inches from her skin, did not move. But the space between them felt different now. Charged. Alive. The watch pulsed again, slower this time, deeper, as if settling into something more stable, more deliberate. The crimson light no longer flickered. It held, steady, controlled, and somehow aware. Emily felt it in her chest, the rhythm aligning again with her heartbeat, but not forcing it, not overwhelming it, matching it. The sensation was no longer violent. It was synchronized. She swallowed, her voice barely steady. "What does that mean?" The king did not answer immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in focus, as if he were looking through her rather than at her, searching for something buried beneath the surface. "It means," he said at last, his voice low and even, "that you did not simply repair it." A pause. Subtle. Heavy. "You completed it." The words settled into the silence like a weight. Emily shook her head slightly, instinctively rejecting the idea. "I do not even know what it is," she said. "That has never been a requirement," the king replied. His hand lowered slowly, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. Not empty cold. Controlled. Intentional. The man beside her stepped forward half a pace, careful, measured. "My king," he said, his tone respectful but edged with concern. "If the relic has bonded beyond its intended parameters, then she represents a variable we cannot account for." The king's gaze flicked toward him for a fraction of a second. That was all it took. The man fell silent immediately, lowering his head again, the warning understood without a single word spoken. The king's attention returned to Emily. "What is your name?" The question was simple, direct, but it carried weight, as if the answer mattered in ways she could not yet understand. "Emily," she said. "Emily Carter." He repeated it once, quietly, as if testing the sound of it. Emily. The way he said it was different, not unfamiliar, not distant, something closer to recognition. The watch reacted again, a single pulse that echoed softly through the hall, as if responding to the name itself. Emily felt it immediately, the subtle tightening in her chest, the pulse sharpening, focusing. The king noticed. Of course he did. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, almost imperceptibly, as if a conclusion had just been reached. "You feel it," he said. Emily hesitated, then nodded once. "Yes." He studied her for a moment longer, then turned slightly, his gaze moving past her, addressing the room without raising his voice. "No one touches her." The command was absolute. It did not echo. It did not need to. Every figure in the hall stilled completely, their attention sharpening, the order settling into place with immediate obedience. The man beside her lowered his head further. "As you command, my king." Emily's breath caught slightly. She looked at him, confusion and disbelief flickering across her face. "Why?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. The king turned back to her slowly. Because, he said, his voice quieter now, but no less certain, the relic has chosen you. The statement hung in the air, undeniable, unchangeable. Emily shook her head again, her thoughts racing, trying to find something logical, something grounded in reality that could explain what was happening. Objects do not choose people, she said. The king's gaze did not waver. This one does. The watch pulsed once more, a deep, resonant beat that seemed to confirm his words. The symbol beneath the glass shifted slightly, the lines within it tightening, refining, as if locking into place around something invisible. Emily felt it again, stronger this time. The connection no longer subtle, no longer something she could ignore. It was there, real, anchored. Then what happens now? She asked quietly. The king did not answer right away. Instead, he looked at the watch, then back at her, his expression unreadable. But his eyes held something new. Not just recognition, not just curiosity, something deeper, something unresolved. Now, he said slowly, we find out why. The hall did not move, yet everything inside it felt as if it had shifted into a new state, a new alignment that could not be undone. The king's words lingered in the air, not loud, not forceful, but final in a way that made resistance feel irrelevant. We find out why. Emily stood where she was, her pulse steady now in a rhythm that no longer belonged entirely to her. The watch in the attendant's hand pulsed in perfect synchronization, the sound no longer foreign, no longer intrusive. It felt familiar. That was what unsettled her the most. Not the fear, not the danger, the recognition. The king turned slightly, his gaze moving away from her for the first time since she had entered the hall. Bring it, he said. The attendant stepped forward immediately, extending the relic with both hands, his posture precise, controlled, as if handling something far more volatile than it appeared. The crimson glow intensified as it neared the king, the symbol beneath the glass shifting again, responding, anticipating. The king did not take it right away. Instead, he looked at Emily. You will hold it, he said. The statement was simple, absolute. Emily's breath caught. You said it was dangerous, she replied, her voice tight despite her effort to remain steady. It is, he said, for those it does not recognize. The implication was clear. The attendant hesitated for the briefest moment before stepping closer to Emily, offering the watch to her instead. The moment it left his hand, the air changed again. The pressure that had lingered in the room eased slightly, as if something had shifted into its proper place. Emily stared at the relic for a second that felt longer than it should have. Then she reached out. Her fingers closed around it. The reaction was immediate. Not violent, not overwhelming, but absolute. The pulse surged once, deep and resonant, then settled into a steady rhythm that matched her own perfectly. The crimson light brightened, but instead of casting erratic shadows, it stabilized, the symbol beneath the glass locking into a clear, intricate pattern that felt complete. Finished. The king watched her closely. Do you feel the difference? He asked. Emily swallowed, her grip tightening slightly around the watch. Yes, she said. Her voice was quieter now, not from fear, but from something else. Awareness. It is not fighting anymore. The king nodded once. Because it is no longer resisting. He stepped closer, close enough now that she could feel the cold radiating from him more clearly, controlled and deliberate, not empty, not lifeless. His gaze dropped briefly to the watch in her hand, then returned to her face. This relic was never meant to be repaired, he said. It was meant to remain sealed. Emily frowned slightly. Then why does it feel? She hesitated, searching for the right word, one that did not sound impossible even as it formed in her mind. Complete. The words settled between them. The king's expression shifted, just slightly, enough to confirm what she had not yet fully understood. Because the seal is no longer intact, he said. The hall seemed to grow colder at those words. Not sharply, not suddenly, but inevitably. The attendant behind her lowered his head further. The figures in the distance remained still, but their attention sharpened, their presence tightening like a drawn line. Emily's heart skipped once, then resumed its steady rhythm, anchored now to the relic in her hand. You said it holds your essence, she said slowly. Your power, your will. Her eyes met his. What happens when it is no longer sealed? The king did not answer immediately. Instead, He lifted his hand again, the same slow, controlled motion as before, but this time he did not stop. His fingers hovered just above hers, just above the relic. The air between them tightened, the space charged with something deeper than before, something that felt older than the walls around them. "We remember," he said at last. The words were quiet, but the moment they left his lips, the relic reacted. The pulse surged, stronger than before, the crimson light flaring outward, not chaotic, but directed. Focused. The symbol beneath the glass expanded, its intricate lines unfolding into something far more complex, something that extended beyond the surface of the watch itself. Emily gasped softly as the sensation hit her. Not pain. Not exactly. It was something else. A flood of impressions, fragments of something she had never lived, yet somehow recognized. Cold stone beneath her hands. A voice speaking words she did not understand but felt. A presence beside her. Close. Familiar. The images vanished as quickly as they came, leaving her breath uneven, her grip tightening instinctively around the relic. The king had not moved. His hand remained where it was, hovering just above hers, his gaze locked onto her with an intensity that had nothing to do with curiosity anymore. "What did you see?" he asked. Emily shook her head slightly, trying to steady herself, trying to separate what was real from what was not. "I do not know," she said, "but it felt like it was not mine." The king's expression did not change, but something in his eyes did. A shift, a realization, and for the first time, the certainty in his presence wavered. Just slightly. Just enough. "No," he said quietly. It was not. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. Because whatever the relic had just shown her was not random, and whatever had been sealed inside it for centuries was no longer contained. The silence did not release her. It settled deeper, heavier, as if the entire hall had shifted into a state of waiting. Not for movement, not for sound, for understanding. Emily stood still, the relic steady in her hand, its pulse no longer foreign, no longer something separate from her. It moved with her, through her. Each beat echoed in her chest, precise and undeniable, as if something inside her had adjusted to match it. The king's words lingered between them. "It was not yours." She tried to steady her breathing, but the memory, or whatever it had been, refused to fade completely. The cold stone beneath her fingers. The voice she could not understand, but somehow felt. The presence beside her. Close. Familiar. Not imagined. Not random. Real in a way that made no sense. "You felt it too," she said quietly, her eyes lifting to meet his. It was not a question. The king did not answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on her, but something in it had changed. The certainty that had defined him since the moment she arrived was no longer absolute. It had cracked. Slightly. Enough to matter. "Yes," he said at last. A single word. Controlled. But beneath it, something else moved. Something older than the hall, older than the relic itself. Recognition. The attendant behind her shifted, just barely, but the movement carried tension. "My king," he said carefully. "If the relic is releasing fragments of memory, then the seal has not only broken. It has transferred." The word hung in the air. Transferred. Emily's grip tightened instinctively around the watch. "Transferred to what?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The king's gaze did not leave her. "To you." The hall seemed to. Close and around her, the vast space suddenly too narrow, too focused, every presence in it turning toward a single point. Her. Emily shook her head, the motion small but immediate. "That is not possible." The relic pulsed once. Deep. Resonant. As if contradicting her. The king stepped closer again, reducing the space between them until it felt almost non-existent. Not threatening. Not aggressive. But undeniable. "You said you did not know what you were repairing," he said quietly. "That is true. But something in you did." Emily's breath caught. "No," she said, more firmly this time, though the certainty she tried to hold on to was slipping. "I fixed things. That is all. I saw something broken and She stopped. Because the words did not feel complete anymore. The king finished them for her. "And you knew how to restore it." Not as a question. As a fact. The memory surged again, sharper this time. Not a full vision. Not complete. But clearer. Hands that were not hers. Working with precision. Placing something delicate into a structure of metal and stone. A voice beside her, low and steady, speaking words she still could not understand. But this time she felt something else with it. Trust. Not given lightly. Not freely. Earned. Emily inhaled sharply, her eyes widening slightly as the sensation passed. I have never been here, she said, but the words felt weaker now. The king's expression did not change, but his voice softened, just slightly. Not in this life. The statement did not echo. It did not need to. It settled into the space between them with a quiet certainty that felt more dangerous than any threat. Emily's heart stuttered, then aligned again with the relic's steady rhythm. That does not make sense, she said. It does not have to, he replied. It only has to be true. The attendant stepped forward again, unable to remain silent any longer. My king, if what you are suggesting is correct, then she is not just connected to the relic. She is connected to the one who created it. The words carried weight, realization, concern. The king did not look at him. Yes, he said, a single word. Final. The reaction in the room was immediate, though controlled. The figures in the distance did not move, but their attention sharpened, the tension rising like a held breath. Emily felt it, too, not from them, but from the relic. The pulse shifted again, not faster, not louder, but deeper, as if something inside it had awakened further. Created it, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. You said it holds your heart. The king's gaze did not waver. It does. Then the person who made it. Emily's words trailed off as the implication formed fully in her mind. The king completed it for her. Was the only one I trusted to take it from me. The silence that followed was absolute. Because whatever connection had just been revealed was not coincidence. And whatever the relic had awakened inside her was not something she could separate from herself anymore. Emily's fingers tightened around the watch, her pulse steady, her thoughts no longer racing, but settling into something colder, something clearer. And you think that person was me? It was not a question. The king's eyes held hers, unblinking, certain now in a way that left no room for doubt. I know it was. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized that the moment she fixed that watch, she had not just changed her future. She had reached back into something far older, and brought it with her. The words did not fade. They remained in the air, heavy and unyielding, as if the truth itself had taken form and refused to release its grip. I know it was. Emily stood motionless, the relic steady in her hand, its pulse no longer just a rhythm but a presence that moved through her with quiet certainty. The fear that had driven her since the beginning had not disappeared, but it had changed. It was no longer sharp and chaotic. It had settled into something deeper, something colder, something that listened. Her eyes remained locked on the king, searching for anything that could contradict what he had just said. There was nothing. No hesitation. No doubt. Only a certainty that felt older than the stone beneath her feet. That is not possible, she said again. But this time the words lacked resistance. They sounded like something she was supposed to say, not something she believed. The king did not argue. He did not push. He simply watched her, as if he understood that the truth did not need to be forced. It only needed time to be recognized. The relic pulsed. Once. Deep. Steady. And this time, the sensation that followed did not come as fragments. It came as a stillness. A quiet awareness that spread through her chest, her hands, her thoughts. Not overwhelming. Not consuming. Present. As if something that had been dormant was no longer asleep. Emily exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening slightly around the watch. If I made it, she said, her voice lower now, more controlled, then why would I take it from you? The question settled into the space between them. Not defensive, not emotional, logical. The king's gaze softened. Not in weakness, in memory. Because I asked you to, he said. The answer came without hesitation, without doubt. Emily frowned slightly, the pieces beginning to shift in her mind, aligning in ways she could not stop. You asked me to take your heart, she said, repeating the words carefully, as if saying them too quickly would make them unreal. The king inclined his head once. To protect it, he corrected. From what? The question was immediate. The king did not answer right away. Instead, his gaze moved briefly past her, toward the distant edges of the hall, towards something unseen. Something remembered. From myself, he said at last. The silence that followed was different. Not heavy, not tense. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when something undeniable has been spoken. Emily's breath slowed, her thoughts sharpening, no longer scattered. You were losing control, she said. It was not a guess. It felt like a conclusion she had reached before. The king's eyes returned to hers. Yes. The relic pulsed again, the sound steady, grounded, as if confirming each piece of the truth as it unfolded. Emily looked down at the intricate symbol now fully formed beneath the glass, no longer shifting, no longer unstable. Complete. So I took it, she said, and sealed it. With your own design, the king added. One that could only be undone by the same hand that created it. Emily's chest tightened slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. The memory did not return in images this time. It returned as understanding, as if the knowledge had always been there, waiting for the moment it would be needed again. That is why it responded to me, she said quietly. Not because I am special. A pause. Because it remembers me. The king watched her carefully. Yes. The word was simple, but final. Emily lifted her eyes to his again, her expression no longer uncertain, no longer defensive. Something had shifted in her. Something subtle, but undeniable. Then the seal breaking, she said slowly, was not an accident. The king did not move. No, it was meant to happen. Yes. The realization settled into place completely. Not as a shock. Not as something sudden. As something inevitable. Emily nodded once, more to herself than to him. Then there is something else, she said. The king's gaze sharpened slightly. What? Emily's grip on the relic tightened just enough for the pulse to respond, deep and steady, anchoring her in a way that felt both new and familiar. If I was the only one who could restore it, she said, her voice calm now, clear, then I did not just fix your heart. She met his eyes fully. I released whatever you sealed it to stop. The words did not echo. They did not need to. Because the moment they were spoken, the air in the hall shifted again. Not dramatically, not violently, but enough. Enough for every figure in the room to feel it. Enough for the relic to pulse once more, deeper than before. And enough for the king's expression to change, not outwardly, but in the smallest way that mattered most. Because whatever had been contained within that seal was no longer just his problem. It was theirs now. The shift did not stop. It deepened. It spread outward from the relic in Emily's hand like a silent wave, pressing against the walls, threading through the air, reaching into every shadow that had remained untouched for centuries. The hall did not shake. Nothing broke. But something old responded. The figures in the distance went completely still, their attention no longer just focused, but alert in a way that had not been necessary until now. The attendant beside her lowered his head further, his voice tight, when he spoke. My king, it has begun. The king did not look away from Emily. His gaze remained steady, but there was no denying it now. The certainty he carried had changed. It had not weakened. It had evolved. Yes, he said quietly. Emily felt it too. Not fear. Not panic. Something colder. Something clearer. The same awareness that had settled into her moments before now sharpened, aligning with the steady pulse in her hand. She understood now. Not everything, but enough. The seal was not just holding your power, she said. It was holding something else back. The king inclined his head slightly. A part of me that was no longer bound by reason. His voice remained controlled, but the meaning beneath it carried weight. Without the relic, that part would have consumed what remained. Emily tightened her grip on the watch, the pulse responding instantly, steady and strong. And now it is free. The king did not deny it. Yes. The silence that followed was not empty. It was decisive, because the truth had already moved past the point of fear. It had reached action. Emily lifted her chin slightly, her gaze steady now in a way it had not been before. Then we do what we were meant to do the first time. The words came without hesitation, not because she had planned them, because they felt right. The king watched her, and for the first time, something unmistakable passed between them. Not just recognition. Agreement. You remember, he said. Emily did not nod. She did not need to. The relic pulsed once, deep and certain, and this time the sensation that followed was not a fragment. It was direction. She turned slightly, her eyes moving toward the far end of the hall, toward the deeper shadows beyond the throne, where the darkness seemed thicker, heavier, as if it held something waiting to emerge. It is not gone, she said quietly. It never was. The air shifted again, colder now, sharper, the silence tightening as if something unseen had turned its attention toward them. The figures in the hall did not move, but the tension in their stillness grew. The king stepped forward, closing the final distance between himself and Emily. Close enough now that there was no space left for uncertainty. Then we end it, he said, not as a command, as a decision shared. Emily raised the relic slightly, her hand steady despite everything. The crimson light flared, not violently, but with purpose, the symbol beneath the glass expanding, its intricate lines unfolding beyond the watch itself, casting faint patterns across the stone floor. The pulse deepened, no longer just a heartbeat, but something larger, something that resonated with the space around it. The darkness at the far end of the hall responded. It moved, not with form, not with shape, but with presence. Heavy, ancient, unbound. Emily did not step back. The pull inside her held firm, guiding her forward instead. One step, then another. The king moved with her, not ahead, not behind, but beside her, his presence steady, controlled, anchored in a way it had not been without the relic. As they approached, the air grew colder still, the pressure increasing, the unseen force pressing outward as if resisting what was coming. Emily stopped when the pull told her to. She lifted the relic higher, her voice quiet but certain. "You gave me your heart to save you," she said, her eyes fixed on the darkness. "Now I am giving it back to finish what we started." The king did not speak. He did not need to. His presence beside her was enough. The relic pulsed once, twice, then the light surged, not outward in chaos, but inward, focused, drawn toward the darkness like a force returning to its source. The pressure broke, not with sound, not with violence, but with release. The heaviness in the air lifted, the cold receding, the silence shifting into something lighter, something that had not existed in that space for a very long time. Emily lowered her hand slowly, her breath steady, the relic now quiet in her grasp. Not lifeless, at peace. The king stood beside her, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the place where the darkness had been. Then, slowly, he exhaled. A single breath. Subtle, but real. The kind of breath that had not been possible before. He turned to her then, his expression no longer guarded, no longer distant. Something had changed. Not just in him. In everything. "It is done," he said quietly. Emily nodded once, the weight in her chest gone, replaced by something steadier. Something complete. She looked down at the relic in her hand, then back at him. "No," she said softly. "It is restored." The hall remained silent. But for the first time, it did not feel like something was waiting. It felt like something had finally been set right. And in that quiet, undeniable truth settled between them. The past had not been erased. It had been fulfilled. And whatever came next would not be shaped by what was broken, but by what they had chosen to restore.